A Texas county bigger than some countries, with just 64 people. 680 square miles of open desert and barely enough residents to fill a school bus. Across the Lone Star State, while cities surge with millions of new arrivals, pockets of Texas are quietly going the other way, emptying out, one family, one closed gas station, one shuttered school at a time. We're counting down 10 places where the silence has nearly won. From bypassed highway towns to counties that lost entire generations, each tells a different story of how a community fades. It starts at number 10, with the emptiest county in America. In the 10th place, Loving County occupies 680 square miles of far west Texas desert just below the New Mexico border. The 2020 census counted only 64 residents here, a number that Federal Estimates project fell to around 52 by 2025. This leaves an official density of under 0.1 people per square mile, though seasonal shifts often push that figure down to 0.065. Established in 1887 and named after cattle drover Oliver Loving, the county collapsed and merged with Reeves County 10 years later before reorganizing in 1931. Its quiet county seat, Mentone, is dominated by its historic two-story brick courthouse. It was here in 1945 that Edna Reed DeWeese served as the first elected female sheriff in Texas history, patrolling a territory with almost no crime. Today, the economy rests entirely on the Permian Basin oil fields. While drilling booms bring temporary waves of workers who live in trailers and man camps, they do not stay. With no local school since 1972 and long stretches without an active gas station, the families who remain must drive miles for basic needs, keeping this vast expanse nearly empty. Number 9. Mentone serves as the only community and the county seat of Loving County. This unincorporated settlement operates on a microscopic scale, where minor population shifts fundamentally alter daily life. While official federal records counted 22 residents during the 2020 census, local administrative briefs suggest the permanent base may sit closer to 18. This unresolved discrepancy reflects the transient reality of a town heavily reliant on fluctuating energy sectors. For decades, Mentone has existed without a local school, and its fuel pump has occasionally gone completely dry, forcing travelers to plan ahead. Yet, rising above the desert flats stands the historic Loving County Courthouse, a two-story brick structure added to the National Register of Historic Places on May 10, 2006. It remains the only two-story building in the entire county. Living here means adapting to a severe lack of local services. Without a grocery store, a hospital, or a bank, the few remaining families must drive 75 miles east to Odessa for basic medical care, fresh food, and everyday supplies. This stark combination of a tiny, shifting resident base and missing daily essentials keeps Mentone on the edge of survival. 8th place, Lobo sits on a 10-acre parcel of West Texas desert, roughly 15 miles east of the Rio Grande. Once a vital watering stop for the Southern Pacific Railroad, the settlement was abandoned in the early 1990s as the rail line declined. Today, empty structures still stand against the desert winds, including a former grocery store, a post office, and a vacant motel. Unlike active rural communities, Lobo exists entirely as a privately owned relic, rather than a functioning municipal area. In 2001, a group of friends from Germany purchased the property for $20,000, using it as a private retreat for art, film, and music events. The town was later listed for sale at $100,000, illustrating the fragile line between speculative private preservation and true community survival. Lobo sits directly atop the historic Van Horn Wells Aquifer, which once sustained local pecan orchards and cattle ranches. But without a functioning local school, shops, or permanent residence, it remains an empty crossroad on Highway 90, where the physical shell of a town survives long after its public life has vanished. Number 7 on our list is Jericho Gap, a settlement born in the late 1880s as a vital mail coach stop between Clarendon and Fort Elliott. When U.S. Route 66 was established in 1926, this remote panhandle outpost became a legendary checkpoint for early motorists. The town's survival was tied to an infamous 18-mile stretch of unpaved black clay between Allenreed and Groom. Whenever rain fell, this dry dirt road dissolved into a thick, sticky mire that routinely trapped Model T cars. Local families made a modest living using teams of mules and workhorses to haul stranded travelers from the mud, turning a geographic obstacle into an economic lifeline. At its peak in the early 1930s, Jericho supported 3 stores, a grain elevator, and a tourist court for its 100 residents. But the very soil that sustained them proved to be their undoing. In 1936, the state rerouted the highway 1 mile north to avoid the dreaded mud. The diversion of travelers was swift and devastating. Daily traffic vanished, and the population fell to just 50 by 1939. The local school consolidated in the 1940s, and the post office closed its doors in 1955. When Interstate 40 bypassed the old alignment entirely in the 1970s, it permanently severed the town from modern commerce. While official records note a lingering population of 36 residents by 2010, the physical remnants of Jericho stand as a quiet monument to how quickly a community can fade when the road moves elsewhere. 6th place on our list, Allenreed grew in the 1920s as an active service town along Route 66. During the oil boom of 1927, the community peaked at roughly 500 residents, supporting a busy main street lined with garages, tourist courts, and the popular 66 Super Service station. While the long-term legacy of the Dust Bowl and agricultural shifts initiated a slow economic decline in the 1950s, the town still maintained its role as a key highway haven, keeping its schools and local businesses open for decades. The true turning point came in August 1982, when the final segment of Interstate 40 opened just 1 mile east of the town. This modern corridor physically bypassed Allenreed, proving that geographic proximity to a major highway is meaningless without direct commercial access. With travelers routed onto the high-speed bypass, local commerce evaporated quickly. The 66 Super Service station closed its doors that very same year, signaling the end of an era. State transportation records capture this sudden shift, showing that daily traffic along the old alignment plunged from 3,200 vehicles to just 400, a drop of more than 85%. Today, with daily traffic counts hovering below 300 cars, Allenreed stands mostly silent. The families who remain must travel miles to larger towns for basic groceries and medical care, showing how quickly a community can fade when the modern world decides to pass it by. Number 5. Farther west in the arid plains, another community illustrates the fragile relationship between settlement and groundwater. This farming outpost was founded during the early 20th century agricultural expansion, when land developers promised fertile soil to families willing to clear the brush. For a few decades, shallow wells allowed these pioneers to cultivate cotton and feed crops, establishing a modest town center with a school, a general store, and a cotton gin. The critical turning point occurred when regional pumping dropped the water table beyond the reach of basic wind-powered pumps, requiring expensive fuel-powered turbines that local families simply could not afford. Without affordable irrigation, crop yields failed year after year, and the agricultural economy collapsed. One by one, families packed their belongings and abandoned their homesteads, leaving the land to revert to dry mesquite pasture. The local school district consolidated with a larger town miles away, and the post office suspended operations shortly after. Today, the settlement is entirely vacant, marked only by crumbling concrete foundations, a rusted gin, and dry fence lines. It stands as a silent representative of the agricultural communities that withered away when the water beneath them disappeared, proving that even the most determined settlements cannot survive without a reliable source of moisture. The fourth town on our list, Thurber, was once a booming industrial powerhouse of 10,000 people, entirely owned by a single corporation. Located 70 miles west of Fort Worth, the Texas and Pacific Coal Company operated this Erath County community as the leading coal producer in the state. Every brick building, house, saloon, and water line belonged to the company, creating a tightly controlled enclave of European miners who labored to fuel the steam locomotives of the Texas and Pacific Railway. The turning point arrived with brutal efficiency in the 1920s, when the railway industry rapidly transitioned to oil-burning engines. Suddenly, the fuel that built Thurber became obsolete. Rather than keeping the community alive, the corporation began systematically dismantling it. They boarded up the shafts, sold off the brick homes for scrap, and forced thousands of families to abandon their lives. By the late 1930s, a city that once boasted the first electric lights and ice plant in the region was virtually wiped off the map. Today, Thurber has no active municipality and no permanent residential base. The silent landscape is dominated by a single, towering 128-foot brick smokestack rising above Interstate 20. Aside from a restored church and a lone restaurant operating in the old company office, this former industrial giant is a quiet graveyard of Texas's early energy history, showing how quickly a community can disappear when its sole employer pulls the plug. In third place, a remote ranching and railway outpost shows the fragile balance between geography and survival in the dry West Texas plains. Founded in the late 19th century as a shipping point for local cattle, this settlement initially grew because of a reliable natural spring that offered relief in an otherwise thirsty area. Early homesteaders established family-run ranches, built a schoolhouse, and relied on the steam locomotives that stopped daily to transport livestock to distant markets. The community served as a social gathering place for families who lived miles apart on the isolated range, offering a brief respite from the demanding labor of desert ranching. The turning point came when groundwater levels began to drop, drying up the central spring and forcing the railway to transition to diesel engines that no longer required water stops. Almost overnight, the economic reason for the settlement's existence dissolved. Land that had once supported small-scale operations reverted to vast, consolidated grazing territories requiring very little human labor. Historic records document the steady loss of services, beginning with the closure of the local general store and culminating in the discontinuation of the local post office that had operated since the early 1900s. Today, the settlement stands nearly empty, a quiet intersection marked only by the weathered timber of old livestock pens and the concrete foundations of a vanished school. A few persistent ranchers still run cattle across the surrounding pastures, continuing a multi-generational legacy of stewardship despite the lack of public utilities, paved roads, or nearby emergency services. This quiet scene represents how quickly a community can disappear when both its natural water source and its primary transportation link are severed. In second place, an unnamed settlement in the dry agricultural belt of West Texas serves as a quiet study in total community collapse. Though its name has disappeared from modern state highway maps, county tax archives and historical land deeds paint a clear picture of what was once a thriving regional trade center. Established in the early 1900s around a critical railway siding, the town once supported a permanent population of over 300 people. It functioned as a primary shipping point for local cotton farmers, complete with a double-battery cotton gin, 2 general stores, a blacksmith shop, and a wooden schoolhouse that also served as a community church on Sundays. The turning point for this community came in the late 1950s, when a combination of long-term groundwater depletion and a catastrophic fire destroyed the central cotton gin. Rather than rebuilding the expensive machinery, the railway company opted to decommission the siding, effectively isolating the town from its primary shipping corridor. Tax assessments from the period show an immediate and drastic decline in property values, forcing families to abandon their homes within a matter of years. By 1965, the local post office had suspended operations permanently, and the school district consolidated with a larger town 20 miles to the east. Today, the site is almost entirely empty. The only physical remnants are several cracked concrete foundations overgrown with mesquite, a rusted boiler from the destroyed cotton gin, and a decaying wooden loading dock alongside the abandoned railbed. The land has reverted to private acreage, used occasionally by local cattlemen who graze their herds across the Old Town Platte, proving how easily a community can vanish when its economic foundation is severed. And finally, in first place, we find a settlement that represents the absolute convergence of every destructive force shaping the modern West Texas landscape. Located in the high, dry plains of the far western county lines, this community holds the highest documented score for total infrastructure loss and population collapse. Founded in the early 1900s as a flagship agricultural colony and heavy-bore irrigation hub, it was designed to show that modern engineering could transform the desert into a permanent garden. For a generation, heavy diesel pumps drew millions of gallons of water from the lowest pockets of the aquifer, supporting a thriving town center with brick commercial blocks, a consolidated high school, and a massive agricultural shipping terminal that loaded dozens of freight cars daily. The turning point was both sudden and absolute. The rapid depletion of the local water table coincided with the soaring energy costs of artesian extraction, making irrigation economically impossible for independent family farms. Simultaneously, the regional railroad decommissioned the shipping terminal, and the State Highway Department routed the new farm to Market Road 5 miles to the south, instantly isolating the community from the rest of the county. Unlike towns that merely suffered a slow decline, this settlement experienced a total systemic failure. For decades, families tried to hold on to their homesteads, showing a deep respect for the arid land their ancestors cleared. But the complete disappearance of basic public services eventually forced even the most determined families to pack up and leave. Today, the site presents a landscape of extreme physical isolation where relocation is practically impossible. The surrounding soil has compacted. The old municipal water wells are completely dry or contaminated with heavy mineral deposits, and the nearest electrical hookup is miles away across private cattle range. There are no public roads leading into the old town center, only private ranch tracks locked behind heavy iron gates. The few remaining physical structures, the hollow concrete shell of the high school and the rusted skeletons of irrigation towers, serve as a quiet warning about the limits of human settlement in an arid land. These quiet places remind us that community is not merely built on hope, but sustained by water, infrastructure, and the roads that connect us to the wider world. If you want to see more hidden history and untold stories of the American West, subscribe to the channel. Across all 10 locations, a single truth emerges. Survival in the dry West relies entirely on water and infrastructure. When the springs dried and the highways moved, these communities faded into the vast landscape. The resilient ranchers and workers still stewarding this land prove that while modern growth is fragile, their heritage remains. Subscribe for more untold stories of American history.